Hey, good morning, y'all. Josh's Severe Weather. Thanks for joining me this morning. And those of you who are regular subscribers, thank you for being patient with me as I was away for a few days. But we've got a huge storm to talk about, and probably our biggest one this winter, at least from a geographical standpoint. So let's get right to that. I will be sharing with you guys the graphic of the day here, and then we'll get over to the satellite. But we do have an extreme winter storm, which is encompassing a good chunk of the country and many places under winter storm warnings, even some blizzard warnings and ice storm warnings across much of the country. At least the northern tier of the country. The southern tier of the country is not participating in winter, and where the two are clashing, we're looking at an extreme outbreak of some severe weather in two forms, one today and then one towards the end of the weekend. So, quite a bit to talk about here. This is what the map shows. We are shut down for the winter in the west and the northern tier of the country, while the pool is open in the south. And you just don't see this kind of extreme very often. I'm at a loss of words, but this is not something that we see every winter. And right now, as we are coming out of La Nina and heading into a neutral and then El Nino phase, we've got a lot of transition. That's what's leading to this crazy extreme weather that we're seeing. These transitions happen every few years, but this one's a little more extreme than the ones that maybe we're accustomed to. So we'll talk about how that's going to impact us here over the next few days. And you can see on the jet stream, a very powerful trough moving southward into the western U.S. We have an upper low here spinning across the southwestern United States. That's providing a lot of lift for some heavy snow over Utah and the Colorado Rockies. And out ahead of it, we've got just a huge area of sinking air. This is a high pressure ridge, subtropical ridge, that's leading to some extreme warmth across the Caribbean region, Florida, the southeast, and the storm track is riding up and over that ridge. And you can see this is what you would experience maybe in the middle of summer, not in the end of winter time. But it is a very extreme pattern that we're in. And this is because we're coming out of La Nina and waters are warming. And we've got just a very ample storm track. I mean, it's not just a west to east zone across the country. Everything is enhanced. If you saw my video New Year's Eve, this should not be a surprise to you. I've been kind of forecasting this throughout the spring. I know it's not quite spring yet, but we're getting close. At least next week is meteorological spring, March 1st. But yeah, definitely for Ash Wednesday, you don't get any busier than this. And I'm going to show you how that's going to impact you guys here. So let's take a look here at temperatures over the next several days. And you can see the cold clashing with the warmth and very bright colors on the screen, big extremes in the forecast here. With 80s and 90s down south today and below zero temperatures in the northern Rockies invading southward. And this cold is going to press southward, but it is going to be met with some resistance in Texas. So you can see it does cool off here at the end of the week, but before it does so, we're looking at a huge area of extreme warmth over parts of the southern United States, 70s, 80s, and 90s. You can see that 100 on the map here, not far from the Texas-Mexico border, and a few spots may get up to 100 here this afternoon. At the same token, Canada's invading us. So we're getting invaded by Mexico from the south and Canada from the north, with a temperature swing here from the U.S.-Canadian border to the U.S.-Mexican border of over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And you just don't see that very often. So very extreme, very cold across the west, 30s in Vegas. I mean, that's just not fun at all. If you want a vacation, Florida is the place to go, 80s and 90s in many places. And as we get to the weekend, it does cool off here in the mid-Atlantic as we see that chillier air pressing southward. In fact, a very cold start to the weekend in New England, sub-zero temperatures, single digits and teens around Boston, 20s in Philly, and it will cool off in the Carolinas and Virginia after a warm end to the week, but warming right back up as we head on into next week. And I know this map doesn't show the entire picture, so I'm going to show you kind of where the biggest extremes are right now. And those are across the Ohio Valley, the Midwest, where we see temperatures today in the 50s in St. Louis and then dropping off quickly tonight into the 20s and failing to recover much into the 30s here over the next couple of days. So a lot of cold coming down. As we take a look at the eastern U.S., we are going to see record highs being reached across a good chunk of the southeast, the Ohio Valley, 70s and lower 80s, upper 80s across Florida. And I'll show you the central part of the country in a little bit here. Tomorrow's highs actually warm up even more to the lower 80s in West Virginia and eastern Kentucky. Break out the shorts and the t-shirts. We're looking at 70s across the Delmarva, 80 degrees in DC, 83 in Richmond, 82 in Raleigh, and it may end up higher at the airport, probably 90. Who knows? I mean, that airport sensor's really screwed up. But these are not only record highs for the date, but in many places, the hottest temperature ever recorded in the month of February. We're going to see all-time records probably broken over at least 10 reporting sites tomorrow. Low 90s across central Florida, South Florida, upper 80s, and mid 80s across Mississippi and Alabama. So some extreme to say the least. But the cold air is not going to last, or the warm air is not going to last too much longer, except in Florida and on the Gulf Coast where we're not participating in winter. But it does start cooling off on Friday. Notice we're going to a record low high in Vermont, 14, I think, in Burlington. So quite an extreme here the next couple of days, and then record low highs across Maine on Saturday, while we have record highs across Central Florida and in Baton Rouge and Tallahassee and Mobile. So we drop down here from the 80s today and tomorrow to the 70s Friday to the 40s across the Carolinas as that cold air gets wedged in, 30s in the Northeast, 20s in New England, and teens and single numbers in northern New England. But it does start bouncing back. And notice how Florida is just going to keep breaking records right on into next week. The warmth that is getting suppressed here over the weekend just continues to rebuild as, again, we're building back here across the southern parts of the country. And I do have the central U.S. as well to talk about. We'll sneak over to the west as well. But you can see record highs in Arkansas, record low highs in Kansas and Nebraska. So very extreme temperatures. Upper 90s in deep south Texas, Corpus Christi, 92 today, record high expected. As we head to tomorrow, it's still hot down south, but it is a little cooler in Texas. We have that front moving through. Much colder, though, across Nebraska as we go today from the 30s into the teens and single numbers across eastern Nebraska, below zero in South Dakota and Montana and Wyoming, and just some brutal cold coming in. And it will start to moderate Friday. It won't be as brutally cold, but it'll still be pretty cold behind our storm. And then as we get to the weekend, temperatures do start to warm back up, and we should be above freezing in the Twin Cities by Sunday. That should start to help to melt the snow that we're getting here in the next couple of days. And early next week, it warms up briefly before the next shot of chilly air comes down. Finally, we're going to look at the west, and here we go. And let's get back to today here. And in the west, you can see record chill. So California, the West Coast, and the North Central Plains are all looking at low, high temperatures for the date, whereas the Southeast is looking at maxes that are breaking records and even all-time February records. So as extreme as we get here, I mean, I'm a little lost of words, to be honest. But look, I mean, we're looking at Bay Area in the 40s tomorrow, Southern Cal in the low 50s. I mean, that's cold for California standards. And as we get to Friday and Saturday, it doesn't exactly warm up. In fact, the chill remains in California right through the weekend. And finally, next week, we start to recover. But the West is shivering here and cranking up the heat in Southern Cal to try and stay warm. So that's the temperature side of things. Let's talk about weather and what we're expecting here. A major storm here that's kind of sprawled across the central part of the country. You can see this is a huge area of high pressure, very cold air pushing down. And when these isobars dip down, that is showing strong cold advection from the north. So when we see these quickly rising pressures in here, tight wind gradient, we see very cold air advancing. At the same time, you see these southwesterly isobars. Those are pumping in warmer air. And where the two meet, you've got warm air jumping up and over colder air at the surface. North of this boundary, that is going to lead to a large area of frozen precipitation in pink as we get later into today and especially this evening in many places from basically southern and central Iowa eastward through Chicagoland into Detroit and the northern half of Pennsylvania. And that frozen area does slowly shift northward tonight, and we see a little more liquid than frozen, but it's not going to get too far north as that cold air mass that's in Canada continues to kind of push right back at it. So very warm south of this boundary, very cold north of it. In between, we have an absolute mess. This is going to provide some disastrous travel conditions over much of this region from Montana into Maine and Massachusetts and New Hampshire for tonight. Just about as big an area of snow as you ever see. Now, there may be some breaks in it, but overall, just a very chaotic weather pattern. And on the warm side, we'll have some severe weather and briefly heavy rain as well in parts of the mid-south. Oklahoma, Missouri, and northwestern Arkansas could have some strong to severe weather later today into tonight. Not a huge tornado outbreak, but there will be damaging winds and some hail possible out of this before that low lifts north and eastward tomorrow and loses a lot of its convection. And we just see some scattered showers by tomorrow morning beginning to fade when they hit the Appalachians. But it's still snowing in the Dakotas, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and northern Michigan right through tomorrow. So this is a long period storm that is going to produce snow in many places for at least 36 hours, maybe 48 hours, and some historic amounts potentially in parts of Minnesota, Wisconsin, and the Dakotas. Typically, we don't see storms tracking this far north, so we don't really see the heavy snow in the middle of winter across this part of the country. We do get snow, don't get me wrong, but this is a large amount of snow. And oh, by the way, back in the West, we see snow falling all the way to the Pacific coast of Northern California and dropping down with heavy snow in lower elevations. Maybe not right in San Fran or LA, but you don't have to get too far to the north and east to see heavier snow falling. So this will be extreme by California standards, and the Pacific Northwest will have a big snow as well as we get into Saturday night and Sunday of next week. Another huge storm forms here in the plains Sunday night, and we are likely to see severe weather out of that as well. And I'm going to talk more about that. That will bring milder air into the northeast, so snow goes over to frozen and it stays wet for the big cities at the end of the month. But colder air lurks, and as we head on into March, things could start to change. And I'm going to talk more about that in future videos. So let's look at snow totals in the Northwest, and we can see things piling up very quickly in Oregon here the next couple of days, and then much more snow to talk about here over the weekend and next week. And some incredible amounts are expected in the higher elevations, but even around Portland and Seattle, 6 to 12 inches being predicted by the GFS model. As we get into the Rockies, Utah is cashing in on a lot of snow, as well as the Colorado Rockies, and maybe not as much in Denver as Boulder, but much of Wyoming into the Dakotas are going to see quite a bit of snow in the next couple of days here, and just some difficult travel expected. And with the snow, we get the cold, and we also get the wind. Winds may gust over 65 to 70 miles per hour in parts of southeast Utah, Colorado, into Wyoming. And where it's snowing here in the Dakotas and Minnesota, we have blizzard warnings in effect as whiteout conditions are expected. Farther east, this is a huge snowfall in many places right along the U.S.-Canadian border. Many places are over a foot of snow. When you see these lighter pinks, that's a foot. We do have the potential in the Twin Cities to see maybe closer to 2 feet. Same for central Wisconsin, maybe around Wausau over to Green Bay, 20 inches being shown by the GFS model. A few models I've seen actually have had higher amounts, even an inch or a foot and a half over northern lower Michigan into the UP as well, and right across Ontario into upstate New York and into northern New England, a huge snowfall. Farther south, when you get south of about 88 and especially I-84 here, we don't really see any accumulating snow as we run into the warmer air. So mainly this is north of I-90. But we do see some sleet here beginning to build later today across Iowa and into maybe like Racine and Kenosha areas here in Wisconsin, and right across Flint, Michigan, and over to about Hamilton, Ontario, maybe even sneaking up close to Toronto, Rochester, New York, right up to just north and west of Boston. We'll see some sleet out of this, so not all that's going to be snow. And we also have quite a bit of freezing rain that I'm concerned about. With a major ice storm, especially across lower Michigan, places like Lansing and Grand Rapids, Ada, Kalamazoo, Detroit, Oakland, Michigan could potentially pick up half an inch to an inch of ice. Even the Chicagoland area, especially north and west of the city, where the lake will have less influence. You get to places like DeKalb and Kane County, Illinois, we could see over half an inch of ice. This could cause widespread power outages, dangerous travel, and just a very nasty setup here the next couple of days. It lasts right through tomorrow night until we get to about the end of the week. So significant ice storm for sure. As we head to the northeast and especially New England, we will see a briefly heavy amount of snow before a change to sleet and freezing rain across the interior of the northeast once again. But really, this is a snowstorm more for New England. We see 1 to 2 feet falling over northern New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and much of Maine. Central and southern Maine could see over a foot of snow out of this storm system right through tomorrow. When you get down south of Boston and Hartford, the amounts are going to be fairly minimal out of this. And our time frame to see that snow is going to be around midday in western New York and northern Pennsylvania, and then later today into this evening around the Poconos and later this evening across interior parts of New England. We're also going to see sleet. It'll start as snow, but changing over to sleet pretty quickly here. And you can see that 1 inch area of sleet around Albany, New York, and Ithaca and those areas, and then spreading to the north and west of Boston, including Manchester and Nashua, New Hampshire. But freezing rain could be a bigger issue across much of this area. We go from snow quickly over to sleet, then freezing rain. And we see many areas north of Interstate 80 that could be in for significant amounts of ice. Places like Coudersport, Pennsylvania, over to the Poconos, and then you get into the Finger Lakes region and even Buffalo, and we see the potential for maybe a quarter to half an inch of ice. And a lot of that is going to be accumulating here this afternoon in Pennsylvania, then tonight across New York, and then spreading into western New England overnight tonight. All right, so that is the ice. Now let's talk about severe weather. We do, a few days ago, we had that risk of severe weather farther south and east. The storm has kind of slowed down a bit. But right now we're looking at the I-44 corridor from near Lawton and Oklahoma City right on up into central Illinois. And there will be the chance for maybe a few tornadoes within this region, but perhaps we're looking at a bigger area of widespread severe wind. Not quite as much directional wind shear, but we definitely could see a few supercell storms here. This is the HRRR, and y'all can see this area of severe weather kind of starts growing here today and expands northeastward up into into the Ozarks region, into central Arkansas, and then heading on into this evening. This is right around dinner time up into St. Louis and in Illinois as well. The Energy Helicity Index, which shows us low-level wind shear, is not super high here for the threat for tornadoes, but it does show that there could be at least enough for it, maybe in northeastern Oklahoma, and this would be early this evening. So, or I'm sorry, move that on here. I was looking at the wrong time frame. So yeah, really the tornado threat's not super high. It's more wind, severe wind that we have to keep an eye on here. And as I show you guys the bulk shear, you can see the winds aloft do start picking up as this swings through Oklahoma, eastern Kansas, and especially as we get to, I need to go back, 18Z. That is 1 o'clock Central Time. You can see these winds aloft strengthening in here. And that could lead to probably a severe thunderstorm watch and maybe a few tornado warnings, but in particular, locally damaging winds across this area. So much of that will be occurring here during the afternoon hours before exiting off to the north and east. The next storm system I'm a little bit more concerned about. It's cutting in farther south, first of all, but you can see the trough digs in, and we see quite a bit of winds aloft here across West Texas Sunday evening around 6 o'clock. And then spreading into Oklahoma and western Kansas in the evening around 9 or 10 o'clock. So a very sharp trough at that point, and the Storm Prediction Center has now a 30% chance, kind of an enhanced risk here for Sunday. And I think mainly late in the day over the panhandles, expanding north and eastward in the evening. And this could be a nighttime severe weather event, including some tornadoes, maybe in places like Wichita Falls and Childress, getting up close to Oklahoma City and up to maybe Wichita and Dodge City. So we're definitely concerned about that severe weather. You guys can see as that storm starts, I don't know what's going on with my models here, I apologize. As that storm starts to get going here Saturday into Saturday night, not a lot across Oklahoma, but as we get into Sunday afternoon, and this is Sunday at 6 o'clock, you can see storms likely to erupt along the dry line region from the Trans-Pecos on up through about Lubbock and just east of Amarillo and Friendship up into central parts of Kansas. And then Oklahoma gets in on the action as well. And we will see probably some supercells down in here, according to the GFS, tracking across the southeastern panhandle of Texas. Also just to the north of I-20, maybe approaching Abilene later in the evening. And that's it. And then overnight, things quiet down by the time they get to Texas, or Dallas, Texas, and east of Oklahoma City. Sorry, I don't know why my models jumped around there, but y'all, I really appreciate your time today. Thank you for watching. Please be safe out there. If you could like this video, share with your friends, and subscribe to my channel, I very much would appreciate that. As always, I want to thank you for your time. I know I took up more than I expected today. There's just so much to talk about. I'd also want to thank my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ for giving me the opportunity to do this every morning. 2 Thessalonians 3:3, but the Lord is faithful, and he will strengthen and protect you from the evil one, which in this case is going to be the weather, apparently. So just my advice is we can't do everything alone. We need the Lord to be with us, to provide for us, and to get us through these difficult storms in life, whether it be the weather or other things that may come up. And I'm happy to pray for you if you're dealing with the evil one getting into your life, trying to sneak into your heart and your thoughts. The Lord can very much help you to escape those temptations and battles from the enemy. He can help equip you. And I just want to share that with you because it means so much to me. And I know every day I go to the Lord and just thank Him, but also ask Him to help me push through these attacks from Satan, and just to help me to do what I do every day. And that's to share the weather and to share my faith with you. So thank you so much for your time. God bless you. And look forward to talking with you again in the morning. And everyone be safe. Thank you.